So hello students, good evening. So for some personal work, I could not take today's class in the right time. So let us go for the final part of this classification of these governing equations. This is the last part of this, and then we shall discuss about these different kinds of boundary conditions that we use in a heat transfer problem or a fluid flow problem using CFD. Okay. So I just share this note. So hello students, can you see the file?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as I was telling in the previous classes that in CFD we generally solve either two types of problems, either marching problem or equilibrium problems. So these terms we did not explain that time, but we were continuously using about this marching problem and equilibrium problem. So now we have that three basic types of governing equations. Either they are mathematically elliptic in behavior, or in hyperbolic in behavior, or in parabolic in behavior, and sometimes we are getting the mixed behavior of these governing equations. Okay, so depending on whether it is a function of space and time or it is a function of time only, based on that we classify these problems into three types. Okay, so initial value problem, or boundary value problem, or initial boundary value problem. Okay, so when we are talking, so initial value problem, you know, when your governing equation, their independent variable is only time. Okay, so when in the governing equation you don't have any space derivative, if you have only the time derivative, maybe first order derivatives or second order derivatives, then we get an initial value problem. Okay, otherwise if your unknown, it is a function of space and time both, so you need initial condition also, and you also need the boundary conditions. Then we are using initial boundary value problems. So when you are using the CFD problems, a practical meaning or practical use, almost all of the problems that we deal in CFD, these are initial boundary value problems. It means that in those problems, we have to specify boundary conditions, and we also have to give the initial condition. Initial condition means these problems of real life, they are mostly unsteady. Okay, so steady state problems, they do not count even for 1%. So all problems of engineering significance, they will be unsteady state problems. For unsteady state problems, you have to compulsorily provide one initial condition. Okay, so the value of this variable at all the points, including the boundary points, these things we shall discuss with respect to a sketch. And then at the boundary also, and in the interior portion also. So when we talk for the boundary condition, we apply the boundary condition only at the boundary gamma. So which we show by the contour gamma. We apply the boundary conditions only on the gamma, and we apply the initial condition at this domain and also at these boundaries. But it is such that the initial this boundary condition, they must satisfy the initial condition. So this is one guideline. Okay, knowing this, you have to find out this unknown here. So as I have told you that all the problems, they can be classified into three types of problems: initial value problem, or IVP, where only initial condition is required because there is no space derivative. It can be initial boundary value problem, or IBVP, or that is the that in this set you solve most of the problems, or it can be only the boundary value problems. So steady state problems governed by the elliptic partial differential equations. These are the boundary value problems where we don't need the initial condition. We need only the boundary condition, and we write the governing equation in a closed domain. So these equilibrium problems or boundary value problems, these are also known as the Jury problems. Okay, so here we are mentioning that these equilibrium problems are also known as Jury problems or boundary value problems. Okay, so when we are talking about these equilibrium problems, these are always steady state problems, and these are governed by elliptic partial differential equations. It means that these boundary value problems, they are governed by the Laplacian operator. So it will be involving either the Laplace, it will be either of Laplace equation type or it will be of Poisson's equation type. So we solve a problem of heat transfer or flow in a closed domain where you have to compulsorily specify the boundary conditions at the boundary points and you have to find out the unknown. So this is the boundary we have shown, gamma, capital gamma is the symbol, and this is the domain. So we have to find out the solution here by using the boundary condition. So for these equilibrium problems, we don't have any initial condition, okay? But when we are solving these CFD problems, you are using a digital computer. To start your program to run, you must have to specify the initial guess. So even you are using an equilibrium problem, even you are solving a steady state problem, you must have to specify the initial guess. So initial guess may be different from initial condition in terms of the name only. Otherwise, by initial guess, whatever we define by initial condition, we provide the same kind of values also by the initial guess. So to start your calculations, your initial guess is compulsory. Okay. So it means that even in steady state problems, you can solve the initial, you have to specify the initial conditions. Now regarding these things, now you know that all the governing equations you know. So you have seen that in the governing equations, there are 4 types of terms: unsteady term, convection term, diffusion term, and the source term. So if the unsteady term is 0, then we say that we are talking about a steady state problem. Okay. So if it is a steady state problem, it can be solved by using the unsteady state. So this information is, you have to remember this. Okay. Just you try to understand what I am telling now. So there are, if your time derivative is absent, then we say that this is a steady state problem. Okay. So the steady state problem can be solved by using 2 methods. One method is, it can be solved using the steady state equations, or it can be solved also by using the unsteady state equations. Okay. So I am repeating this, what I am telling. A steady state problem can be solved using the steady state governing equation, or it can be solved even by using the unsteady state governing equation. Okay. So when it is a steady state problem, when it is a steady state problem, steady state calculations or unsteady state calculations will give you the same result. Okay. But if your problem is an unsteady state problem, so that unsteady state problem, you cannot solve it by the steady state program. So for an unsteady state problem, you have to use unsteady state program. It means that if your problem is unsteady, you have to compulsorily use the derivative, the time derivative. You cannot do it. So using a steady state program, you cannot solve the unsteady state problems. But using an unsteady state program, you can solve a steady state program and you will get the same result. So this is just, sometimes I ask this in exam also. So okay, this is just for information. So here we are showing that in equilibrium problem, we always need a closed domain. So in this domain boundary, we have to specify the boundary conditions. So here we are showing one specific example where it can be a Laplace equation or it can be a Poisson equation. So we are talking about 2-dimensional heat conduction in a slab. This is the slab, this is in a 2-dimensional XY plane. So this is the domain. So whatever the arbitrary geometry we are showing, now this is becoming, having a specific shape, a rectangular domain. So here in this domain omega, this is the Laplace equation. This equation is valid and we are defining the boundary conditions at 4 boundaries. It has 4 boundaries. Okay. So it does not have any initial condition. In Laplace equation, we don't need any initial condition. But when you are going to numerically solve this, you have to provide initial guess. Okay. So now, if you look at the left boundary and the bottom boundary, we have constant temperature boundaries. So these are different temperatures, but they are constant, C1 and C2. So these kind of boundary conditions, these are known as the Dirichlet boundary conditions or the essential boundary conditions. So here, the value of the variable is directly specified. Otherwise, in the remaining boundaries, we are getting that these are the insulated boundaries. So the right boundary and the top boundary, they are insulated. So there is no heat transfer across these boundaries. So the respective heat flux, so del T del Y, okay, it is 0. And similarly here, so it is like actually the formula is del T del N. So for the flux boundary condition, if you look here, here we are defining the unit normal vector. This is n cap. So this is a local normal vector. So this vector, it keeps on changing its direction. It has a direction here like this. It will be this way. Okay. So it is continuously changing. So if you come to this, so when you are calculating the heat flux, you are actually calculating del T del N. Okay. Now if you come to this boundary, what is happening here? Your normal, this boundary, this is vertical. Okay. For this phase, your normal is horizontal. So this you just notice it. Okay. We are telling that this is a local normal which continuously keeps on changing the direction. So when we are going for this flux boundary condition, we have to define del T del N. Now this N, it can be X, it can be Y. Okay. So for this, for the regular geometries, so this is a regular geometry. So for this regular geometry, here your del T del N, N is becoming parallel to Y axis. If you draw a normal to this line, this is the periphery across which we are telling that there is no heat flux. Okay. So the normal, there is only one choice. Normal can be outward, normal can be inward, but nothing else other than that. So this N, this is the Y direction. So N is becoming Y. So this is del T del Y. And similarly here we are getting the del T del X. So Laplace or Poisson's equations or the potential flow you have read, okay, in fluid mechanics. Many of you have read in BTech. So these potential flow equations, these are also examples of the equilibrium problems. Okay. So when these are governed by the elliptic partial differential equations. Now, other than this elliptic partial differential equation, so this is an example of the boundary value problem. You remember. So you are specifying the boundary conditions everywhere. Then this is corresponding to the boundary value problem. And when you are looking for the remaining two equation sets, this parabolic and elliptic partial differential equations, they correspond to the marching problems. So that by marching, we tell that we have some solution in an open domain. We use this solution, the initial data solution we use, and we give solution for the next time. So it means that when we are talking about this equilibrium problem, time is not an important parameter. This is only a spatial problem. Spatial means S-P-A-T-I-A-L. We are discussing about the spatial coordinates. But when we are going for the marching problem, it means that it can be marching in time or it can be marching in space. But in most of the problems, we are actually marching in time. It means that suppose you consider a rod, a temperature, just to consider an one-dimensional rod. Now, at that rod, you are finding the temperature at various time instants. Okay, at a particular point. That point can be located anywhere other than the boundaries, or it can be even a Neumann boundary point. Okay, so at that point, at time t equals to 0, you know the temperature. Okay, so when you know the temperature at time t equals to 0, then you say that yes, this is my initial condition at this particular point. Now, using this initial condition and you have the boundary conditions, you can actually calculate in the future classes. You will calculate actually for such problems. You can find the temperature at that particular point or at any point at the next incremented time with the interval of time delta t. So delta t represents some increment in time, the way you have read in calculus, increment in x, delta x, increment in y, delta y in spatial coordinates. Similar to that, this in the incremental time, you can find a new solution. So this you in time, you cannot go back in time. You cannot go back to the past, but you can only move in the forward direction. You can move only in the future direction in the time coordinate. So it means that you are knowing the present. Knowing the present, you can predict the future, or knowing the past, you can predict the present and also the future. It means that you are traveling in the only one direction. You are traveling in the forward direction only. Okay. So these kind of problems, you can travel in space, you can travel in time, but in most of the cases, you are actually traveling in time. So when you are using your old data or old solution and predicting your new solution or new data, then you are telling that you are marching. So you are predicting new results. You are moving in time, moving in the forward direction. So the rod which I was talking about, this temperature distribution in a rod at a particular point at t equals to 0, you have a certain temperature. At delta T, you have a different temperature. At 2 delta T, you have another different temperature. At 3 delta T, you have another different temperature. In this manner, you keep on increasing your increment and you are getting different temperatures. But you find that when you are going to higher and higher time, the difference in the temperatures, they are actually decreasing. It means that your calculations, they are converging to the exact solution. Okay, they are approaching the exact solution. It means that you have one solution, that is the initial condition. Using the initial condition, you are predicting by some CFD formula that this will be the new temperature at that point after 5 seconds or after 1 second. Then after 2 seconds, you are finding another temperature. After 3 seconds, you are finding another temperature. All you are calculating by some formula. Those formulas we shall show in the finite difference classes. So it means that you are predicting the value, the varied values, the different values of the temperature. Okay. So this, what will happen, the value of temperature at the future time, okay, that you are predicting. So you are marching in time. Similarly, you can do marching in space. Okay, so I have these marching problems are actually initial value problems or initial boundary value problems. So a boundary value problem cannot be a marching problem. So for equilibrium problems, we need a closed domain. For marching problem, we do not need a closed domain. Closed in the sense there is a time. Time is not closed, so you can keep on moving in the forward direction in time. Or even if you think of the boundary layer over the flat plate, or if you think of this Hagen-Poiseuille flow, suppose let us discuss about this boundary layer equation over a flat plate. Okay, so you all of you know the boundary layer profile for the laminar flow and for the turbulent flow. Actually, when we are solving it, so at the inlet of the flat plate flow, we are having a free stream boundary condition. Okay, so fluid is entering as a free stream, fluid is approaching as a free stream to the flat plate, and then the profile, it continuously gets modified, and eventually we get the flat plate boundary layer profile. Okay, so you know the velocity profile, so it is not a parabola. Okay, you know that for a flat plate boundary layer, solution was equations were given by Ludwig Prandtl and solutions were given by Blasius. So Blasius has given exact solutions in 1908, and another student of Prandtl, he was von Karman. So he has given the approximate analytical solutions for the boundary layer equations. So in this, from this, what they are telling that when you are moving downstream from, so I think all of you remember the boundary layer pictures. You can imagine, actually you can visualize. So what I am telling that this x equals to 0 for this flat plate, this is known as the leading edge, and the ending point is known as the trailing edge. So as you are moving away from x equals to 0 to the lead to the trailing edge, what is happening that the boundary layer thickness delta, it is gradually increasing and eventually it is becoming asymptotically flat. Okay, so what we say that this boundary layer thickness, what will happen after some x, we don't know. So it means that knowing this boundary layer thickness at some location, we can predict the boundary layers thickness at some next location. It means that you are moving in one direction from the leading edge to the trailing edge. It means that you are moving in one direction in any marching problem where direction of marching is important. It means that if you are moving from left to right, you know that things are happening in the left. Knowing those solutions, you will predict what will happen at the right direction. Okay, right means right side. RIGST is right side. Okay, so it means that you can predict the boundary layer thickness, you can predict the velocity distribution, this small uy, capital U. So this boundary layer equation, it is a steady state for laminar boundary layer flow. You know that the Prandtl's boundary layer equations, they are of steady state in nature. They are not unsteady in nature. So even though you are using a steady state problems, but you cannot tell that this is a boundary value problem. So this you should remember that all steady state problems are not equilibrium problems. It need not be. But majority of the steady state problems, they are governed, they are equilibrium problems if in those equations you are getting the only the Laplacian or Laplacian operator. So it means that if it is only governed by the diffusion term, Laplacian operator, what is the meaning of that? With the Laplacian operator in the governing equation, it is located at the right side. So at the right side, we have the diffusion term. So when we are talking about the diffusion term, or we are talking about transport through heat conduction, transport through thermal conductivity, transport of heat through thermal conductivity, or transport of momentum by the dynamic viscosity or kinematic viscosity, then we say that we are talking about the diffusion term and we are talking about an elliptic equation, okay, or boundary value problem. Now, if you go back to your boundary layer equation, so if you remember the x momentum equation in the boundary layer equation, so what is the x momentum equation for a flat plate? We know that u del x equals to nu del to u del y, u del u del x plus v del u del y equals to nu del to u del y2. Okay, so this is the boundary layer equation. I am repeating this. This is a steady state equation. We don't have unsteady term. We have the convection term u del u del x plus v del u del y in 2 dimensions. We have no source term due to pressure. So for a flat plate boundary layer, pressure is constant, pressure field is constant, so dp dx is 0. Then we have the diffusion term. In the diffusion term, there is order of magnitude difference. Because of that, del 2u del x2 term, it becomes smaller, and del 2u del y2 terms, it prevails. So in the diffusion term, we have only the mu, means mu del 2u. If you divide by this density, so it is nu del 2u del y2. So in the right hand side, you have only one diffusion term, one term from that, and in the left hand side, you have the convection term. So you remember these boundary layer equations, these are special cases or subsets of the Navier-Stokes equations or the momentum equations. So when we are talking about this boundary layer equation, these are steady state equations, but these are not governed only by the Laplace operator. It is governed also by the convection operator. So it has a flow term. So direction is important. Because of that, boundary layer problems are not equilibrium problems. These are marching problems. So where you will do marching in space, this you have to understand, this you have to remember. So you have two coordinates, x and y, but both of them are not important. Both of them are not marching directions. So for a boundary layer problem, the gradients are important in the y direction compared to the gradients in the x direction. But when we predict the solutions, we produce the solutions in the downstream direction. Okay, it means that we are marching in the flow direction. We are marching in the x direction. So here I have given you clear-cut example that boundary value problems the steady state problems are most of the times boundary value problems, but sometimes they can be marching problems. So these boundary layer equations that I have discussed right now, these are parabolic partial differential equations. So these parabolic partial differential equations of boundary layer type, these are discretized by Crank-Nicolson scheme. So Crank-Nicolson scheme we shall discuss when time comes, just I am mentioning for information. So now you know equilibrium problems, it requires only the Laplacian. Or if it is the marching problem, so Laplacian is not sufficient. Other than Laplacian, you may get diffusion term, you may get the unsteady state term. So all the unsteady state problems, these are the marching problems, but sometimes some steady state problems, they can also be marching problems. So now you know these things, okay? So when we are talking about the marching problems, so these are just, I was telling that some extra information. So here we have shown one illustration. So this is very clearly mentioned that these are unsteady, transient means unsteady, or transient like problems, okay? So similar to unsteady state problems. So this may be steady state problem also, where we need the solution of this partial differential equation in an open domain. So this is an open domain where we have in 2 dimensions, So X is one dimension, time, space is one dimension. It can be space, it can be time. So if you think that this is the domain, in this domain means omega, but here omega is a closed domain. You have an open domain. So you need you know the solution at x equals to 0. If you think that this is the x-axis or the time axis, so in marching problem, what we do, on these two boundaries in two dimensions, we know the boundary conditions. So boundary conditions are specified at time t equals to 0. You know the initial condition. So you know the initial condition. Knowing the initial condition, you will predict the value of the unknown at this particular location. This is one location. So you will predict, you know what is the value of velocity here. So knowing this velocity, you will satisfy velocity in this location such that these calculations at this upper terminal and lower terminal, they match the boundary values. Boundary conditions are satisfied. Using this value at t equals to delta t, you will now come to the next time level here. For example, if it is time problem at t equals to 2 delta t. So you can predict your solutions here. So you can predict your solutions here. You can predict your solutions here. It means that there is no exit boundary, but you need a sufficiently long domain. So it means that you are having a direction. In equilibrium problems, these are direction independent problems. So there is no directional preference. This is very important. So this diffusion coefficient, suppose if you think thermal conductivity is here. Now, thermal conductivity is isotropic. It does not have any directional preference. So if you do some kind of heating here, heating will be affecting in all directions. If you put some heat source here, it does not say that this part will be more heated, this part will be left less heated, not like that. So this heating at any point will propagate with same intensity everywhere. So this is for the this boundary value problems or equilibrium problems. But when we are going for these marching problems, then direction is important. Okay, so you are moving from the past to the present, and then you are going to the future. So there is a particular direction in marching problem. Okay, so let us just see these things. We are asking for the solution of the PDE in an open domain. Okay, where auxiliary solutions are the initial conditions and the boundary conditions. So these are certainly initial value problems or initial boundary value problems. Okay, so just what I have mentioned you, that by satisfying the initial condition and the boundary conditions, you find on future solution data. Using this future data, you again find the latest data. Using this one, again you move to the new data line and keep on predicting the new solution. Okay, and then you keep on continuing this. So that we do in an unsteady state problem. So when we are solving flow past a cylinder, for example, suppose if you are studying flow past an aerofoil, when you solve it as an unsteady state problem, so what do? We find the velocity distribution or any property. Suppose you are telling at any particular point, velocity you are finding at different time instants. So actually we are marching in time. Okay, so these are the transient or transient like problems. Now here we have given this transient heat conduction in a rod. So this is unsteady state problem, but what I was telling you about the steady state problems, I was discussing about this boundary layer problem on a flat plate. So this is one example of marching problem. And in the Hazen-Parsoli flow, suppose if some of you have solved this flow through a channel by using a CFD program. So if you write a CFD program for solving flow through a channel, or you can run it in ANSYS Fluent, if you plot it at different locations, what you will find that you know that there is a concept of entrance length for this kind of internal flows. Okay, so there are three kinds of flows. One is internal flow, one is external flow, one is free surface flow. So I am talking this boundary layer flow is an example of the external flow, and flow through a pipe or flow through a channel, these are examples of the internal flows. Okay, so boundary layer is forming in external flow also, in internal flow also. So when you are talking about the flow through a pipe, you know the concept of the entrance length. Okay, so for laminar flow, you know that we get a paraboloid, the velocity distribution after the fully development of the flow. Okay, so when the flow is not fully developed, what happens that you start with a free stream velocity, and that free stream velocity after entrance length, after some distance, it gives you a parabola. It means that from the free stream velocity up to the parabola, you are actually marching in the downstream direction and you are getting the modified velocity profiles. So you are getting so many velocity profiles. These velocity profiles, because of viscous action, okay, so you know that, just I am telling you for you know actually that in the real flow, viscosity is present everywhere, but it will not act if the fluid we are discussing, it is far away from a solid surface. Okay, so even in a viscous flow, the fluid will act as an inviscid fluid if it is away from a solid surface. So if it is acting as an inviscid fluid, it cannot generate the vorticity. Okay, so if viscosity is not acting, so vorticity will not be generated, and we say that the flow there, it is irrotational. So in the pipe flow or in the channel flow, what is happening that at the walls, top wall and bottom wall, vorticity is generated because of friction, because of viscosity. What is vorticity? A vorticity is a linear combination of the cross velocity gradients. So this velocity gradient tensor, you have read it, you have seen it, I have shown you that velocity gradient tensor means grad V. So grad V has 9 components in 3 dimensions. These 9 components in 2 dimensions, there will be 4. So these 4 components, they will be generated. Some of them may be strong, some of them may be weak. They will be generated at the wall. Okay, some of them may be 0 also. So when they are generated at the wall, they will modify the free stream velocity and you will get the deformed velocity. This deformation of the velocity will continue as long as your entrance length is not completed. And then finally you are getting the parabolic velocity profile. So this is also one example of a marching problem. Okay, then whatever the discussions, whatever the classifications we have made, this parabolic PD, this hyperbolic PD or this elliptic PD. So if we try to provide geometric interpretation of what is the meaning of this parabolic PD, what is the meaning of the hyperbolic PD. So here we are showing illustrations, 3 examples we are showing. So these are also discussed in any classic CFD book. So I am telling you many times that you can study the book of J.D. Anderson. For any student who is studying CFD for the first time, you should start it with J.D. Anderson Jr.'s book. That is a classic book. And after that, you can go to the book of Tanhill, Anderson, Fletcher. There are many good books, in fact, in CFD. Now it is a well-developed subject. Okay. So now we want to discuss the geometric meaning of an elliptic partial differential equations. So we are telling that, you know that in elliptic partial differential equation, the discriminant was negative. In the first class of the classification of PDs, you have seen that if b square minus 4ac, if it is a negative quantity, then we say that we don't have any real root. Okay, we don't have any slope at any point. It means that if you want to draw suppose this is for a boundary value problem. So for elliptic PD, this is the computational domain and this is the boundary, and we have taken an arbitrary point P. So at any point P, maximum you can get 2 characteristics. Okay, 2 characteristics means 2 curves or 2 straight lines that will intersect each other. Now that is the maximum case. So there are 3 possibilities. You may not get any characteristic, you may get only 1 characteristic, or you may get 2 characteristics. It means at any point within the domain. Okay, so and that those nature of the characteristics, they will tell you about the domain, about the effect of, you can say that, some kind of perturbation in the parameter, in the unknown parameter. If you are solving for temperature, so perturbation in temperature at one point, it will just depend on the nature of the characteristics. So what is happening in this particular domain for this elliptic partial differential equation? This is the elliptic partial differential equation. We don't have any real characteristic. So both the characteristics, their slopes were imaginary. So we had 2 imaginary characteristics, but they were distinct. So it means that at any point you do not have any characteristic curve. So if you do not have any characteristic curve, you do not have any specific directional bias, then we say that at one point P, whatever you do, that effect is propagated. So you can provide some kind of disturbance anywhere. Okay, so this is the domain omega. At any point within omega, you can make perturbation. You can perturb the temperature. For example, this is for temperature. At this P, I mean that this point P, it can be located anywhere. Okay. So we are telling that this is the domain of dependence. Okay. So domain of dependence means at any point within this omega, you can perturb the property. So this point P, if it is the point of perturbation, this point P can be anywhere within omega. I am not talking about gamma. Okay. And then whatever the disturbance is, maybe disturbance means suddenly you add a heat source, suddenly you add a heat sink. Those are the disturbances. Okay. So whatever perturbation, whatever you do, that effect will be propagated everywhere. It means that if you are hitting here, this heating effect will go in the all directions at every point. So this is having no directional bias. So this is the case when we don't have any characteristics. Okay. So if there is no real characteristic curve, if the characteristic curves do not exist, we do not have any specific direction of propagation, then we say that we are talking about the elliptic partial differential equation in a closed domain where the entire domain is the domain of dependence of temperature and entire domain is the domain of influence of temperature. Okay. So this is one property of the elliptic partial differential equation. So that is the meaning that. So regarding these equilibrium problems, now these are the equilibrium problems, you understand that this domain must be closed, boundary conditions must be defined, and whatever the entire domain is the domain of influence, entire domain is the domain of dependence. Okay. So here solution at any point depends on the boundary conditions completely specified in gamma. So the question is that for such problems, the question is posed like that: find the temperature in omega when you know the temperature and its gradient on gamma. Okay. So this is specified, and then we have to find temperature at omega or some part of the gamma where Neumann boundary condition is given. So you remember, where you know the heat flux, there you do not know the temperature. So at one particular point, temperature and heat flux cannot be specified together, either temperature or heat flux. Okay. So you have to find, one of them should be specified. If heat flux is specified at a particular point, at that point temperature is an unknown quantity. You have to calculate the temperature. Okay. So here we are giving the example similar geometric interpretation for the hyperbolic partial differential equations, and then we are talking about the parabolic partial differential equations. Okay. So let us go for the hyperbolic partial differential equation. You know that by now you know that this wave equations, whether it is a first order wave equation or it is a second order wave equation, does not matter. This wave equation is an hyperbolic partial differential equation. So we are talking about one-dimensional wave equation in 2 dimensions, and this is the speed of wave, and this is the unknown quantity. So this is the transported quantity. This u quantity, it is a function of both space and time. So now we are showing here that at any point, suppose this is a big domain actually. Okay. So this is some part of the domain we are showing. So this is a closed domain. Here you cannot bound the domain actually. So this is in an open domain. So this is an one-dimensional problem. Because of that, there are 2 coordinates. One is x coordinate, one is time coordinate. We are getting 2 coordinates. This is the x coordinate and this is the time coordinate. Okay. So at time t equals to 0, we have the initial condition. So this is the initial data line. At time t equals to 0, we have the initial condition, and we also have the boundary conditions at different x values. Okay. So boundary conditions will be specified at points corresponding to this gamma. So the x points that will lie on gamma, on that the boundary condition will be given. So here we are within, this is a big domain actually. So we are showing a part of the domain. At any point, this is an arbitrary point, this arbitrary point, at any point, we get 2 real characteristics. So if you remember for the method of discriminant, then we are telling that b square minus 4ac, if it is greater than 0, then we are getting a hyperbolic kind of conic section, and we are getting 2 real characteristics. So characteristics are lines or curves along which u and its first derivative, they are continuous. So these are the characteristic curves. So this is the curve along which u and del u del t, they are del u del x, they will be continuous, but their second derivatives are indeterminate. If you go back to your class note, you will find the definition. Okay. So we have two characteristic curves at any point. I am showing one point P here. It can be here also. Okay. You can draw two characteristic curves. So these two characteristic straight lines, they have different slopes. So one is the negative slope characteristic, one is the positive slope characteristic. So the slope of these curves, so we are not going to any derivation. We are just showing the outline. So this is the slope minus 1 by c. So this is the negative slope. So you see the line. Easily you can understand this slope will be y equals to minus mx. Okay. So this is y equals to minus mx plus c. And this is y equals to mx plus c kind of pattern. So this is a positive slope curve. And this is a negative slope curve. So slope comes out to be minus 1 by c. So this is running to the left side. Because of that, this curve CD, this is known as the left running characteristic. So this is one characteristic. This is a positive slope part and it is moving to the right. Okay, the slope is positive. So because of this, this is known as the right running characteristic. So AB and CD, these are the two characteristic curves that are intersecting at a point P. So this AB, this is the right running characteristic curve. And this AC, this is corresponding to, so this is, you are marching in time. So you are giving, this is your unknown. This C is a known quantity. Okay. So in this equation, you just note here. So in this equation, there is only one equation. In one equation, you cannot have more than one unknown. Okay. So you have four symbols. One is U, one is C, one is T, and one is X. So out of four variables, unknown is only one, that is U. So T is not an unknown, X is not an unknown, C is not an unknown. So C is a constant, it is an input variable. Okay. So time is an input variable, X is an input variable. So in any CFD problem, so you know that these are the independent variables, X and space and time. All independent variables are input variables. So they are known quantities. So this X is your choice. You will tell X equals to 5 or 5.5 or something else. Similarly, you will tell the value of T, whether it is 0.3 or 0.5. So T is a known quantity, X is a known quantity, and C is a known quantity. If you know all the three quantities, then only you can find out the value of U at different locations at different times, because U is a function of space and time both. Okay. So what is the meaning of marching problem? The meaning of marching is that at any particular location or at different locations, what will be the value of U, unknown U, with increasing time? That is the marching. Okay. So this is the direction of marching. Okay. So you are moving in time and you will find out by knowing the value of U at this point or at any point at a particular time, you will predict what will be the value of U at the next time. Okay. So if you see here, we are getting two triangles. One is a closed triangle, PAC. Other one is an open triangle. We cannot say that it is a triangle. So what is happening there? In compressible flow, sometimes you have read about the zone of silence. Okay. In compressible flow, when we are talking about this Mach cone, so that time we get some zone of silence, zone of influence. Same concept is valid here also. So this is the domain of dependence. Okay. So you want to find out the value of this unknown U at point P. Okay. So the value of this unknown at point P, this depends on this data. Okay. So this is the data, the initial condition plus the value of U within these zones. They will tell you what will be the value of U at this point corresponding to this time. Okay. So there is data for U in these zones also, here also, here also. U is present everywhere as a function of space and time. You know that. That is the meaning of fluid continuum. U is existing at every point at every time. But what will happen at point P, it does not depend on data at this in this zone, data in these white zones, or data in these three zones. It means that what will happen at point P, what will be the value of U at point P, it depends only on the data on U in this triangle PAC. So initial condition at t equals to 0, initial condition means what is the value of U at different x locations at time t equals to 0. That is the initial condition. So by initial condition, we mean that the value of U at different x locations corresponding to the boundary and also in the domain at time t equals to 0. Okay, so initial condition is on U, boundary condition is on U or its gradient. So this region is known as the domain of dependence because solution at point P depends on the value of U within this triangle, and what will happen at point P or what will happen here, it can influence the solutions in these zones. Okay, so it means that this is the zone of influence of this unknown by these regions. It means that I am telling you the solution at point P, it will not influence what is, means the influence is only in the upward direction, the up direction, time direction. Okay, so it means that what is happening here, it cannot make any change here. This is past actually, but what is happening here now, it can influence the future. So information is moving only from t equals to small to t equals to big. So what is happening in the latter time, that cannot do anything in this direction. So information is passing only in the one direction, not in the reverse direction. Here information means perturbation, it is propagating in all directions. Okay, so this is the very clear-cut difference. So these are the characteristics for these wave equations. Okay, these are very classic examples actually. So since in mathematics actually these things are solved and then we really find the equations of the characteristics. So there are exact solutions for these wave equations. There are classical exact solutions. So there is a very good mathematics book. So I suggest that you can collect that book, that is by Arvind Krejcik. Okay, so Arvind Krejcik's higher engineering mathematics book, I think you can purchase it. It will be an asset. It is published by John Wiley and Sons. Okay, so in that book or in any mathematics book, you can get more details about solutions, exact solutions of this wave equation, either in second order or in first order. Now the last one. So whatever I was discussing, these things are written here. By reading, you will easily understand. Okay. Now the last one is the parabolic partial differential equations. So that is also one kind of marching problem where the discriminant value is 0. So we know that in parabolic PD, the discriminant is b square minus 4ac, that becomes 0. And when there is no discriminant, then we say that, yes, 0 value discriminant, then we say that we have only one real characteristic curve. So it means that the characteristic curve, it can be drawn anywhere, okay, in the domain. So this is a one-dimensional problem. So this is the domain in space and time. This is a very big domain, but we are just showing part of this. Similarly, here in this problem, our domain is in 2 dimensions. So these are the xy plane, this is the xy plane, and we are making a plot such that t is also a parameter, okay? So many of you, I think you have plotted, suppose in TechPlot, suppose there is a software TechPlot. So when you are plotting contour plots, so if you have 3 variables x, y, t, you can plot some contour of t, okay? So similarly, in the xy plane, you can represent variations with respect to the other variable time, okay? So here, we are just showing in the xy plane for the heat conduction problem in 2 dimensions, okay? That within this domain, these are not characteristics, okay? So these are the boundary, these are the contours of, these are the limits of the boundary condition data. So these are actually on these curves, we define the boundary conditions, and here we are moving. So this is the direction of time, okay? So this is the direction of x, but don't get confused that this is different and that is different. So this is in the xy plane. We are predicting the solution with respect to increasing time. So at time t equals to 0, we are showing as an initial data line. We have the initial condition here. Knowing the initial condition, at any time instant, at other future time instant, we have the solution at point P. So this is, we say that this is the characteristic curve for this temperature, this transient heat conduction problem. So the heat conduction problem, so you remember heat conduction problem, when it is the steady state problems, then it is elliptic. Now same heat conduction problem, if you have the time derivative, if you have del T del T, now it totally changes, then it becomes parabolic. Okay, otherwise it is same equation. So this heat conduction equation, this is a special case of energy equation. So in the energy in the energy equation, if it is only steady, then you are getting elliptic, but just by adding this transient term or the unsteady term, it becomes the parabolic partial differential equation. In any parabolic PD, we have only one characteristic at any point within the domain. So at every case, for every case, we are showing one particular, this P is that arbitrary point, okay? So at this point, you are finding only one characteristic curve, and we have one domain of dependence and we have one domain of influence. So it means that the solution at point P, it depends only on the previous data that ahead of point P. It means that the initial condition, using the initial condition, you got solution here, then you got solution here, you got solution here, you got solution here. Eventually you are getting this solution. When you are getting these solutions, you are actually satisfying the boundary conditions. So this picture, it is closely resembling with this picture, this basic picture of the marching problems. Okay, for marching problems, this is our basic picture when we are satisfying the boundary conditions and also starting with the initial condition, and then we are moving in the future direction. Future can be in time, future can be in space. Okay, the same thing we are showing here. So for this particular solution here, this is the domain of influence, and solution at this point, it can do some changes in the right side where you have not calculated. So this you have calculated, by calculating this you came here. Now using this you will calculate these solutions. Okay, so if you make some changes here, these solutions will be affected, these solutions will be updated. Because of that, we say that this is the domain of influence of the solution at point P, and the solution at point P, it depends on the previous data. Okay, so you are marching in time, so you are marching at time from t equals to 0 to the future time. So this is the example of the parabolic partial differential equations. Okay, so here we are just quickly, we shall discuss about the initial and boundary conditions in primitive variables. So whenever we are discussing about our derivation of the momentum equations, we have talked about two kinds of variables, the primitive variables and the flux variables. So most of the conventional CFD tools, they use the primitive variables. So when we calculate this velocity, pressure, temperature, etc., we are actually using the primitive variable version of the momentum equations, Navier-Stokes equations, and then we solve them. Okay, and another approach is the stream function vorticity formulation. These are the mixed variable formulations. Okay, so then here we have, for solving any kind of numerical problems, we need exact solutions. These exact solutions, these are known as the initial conditions and boundary conditions. So initial conditions and boundary conditions, they are exact solutions of the governing equations. So this you have to remember. Okay, so at t equals to 0, you are getting the initial conditions, and at boundary conditions, you provide the exact conditions, exact solutions. These are the boundary conditions. Now, requirements of initial and boundary conditions. Suppose I have already told you in the beginning of today's class that steady state problems, the steady state problems are generally boundary value problems, but they are not always boundary value problems. So I was talking about this boundary layer equation. It is a steady state problem, but it is not a boundary value problem. So this becomes an initial value problem, okay, or initial boundary value problem. So steady state problems are generally elliptic type, and they are governed by the boundary value problems. Okay, so even it is the derivative is absent, but we always need an initial guess. So if you are using a computer for solving any steady state equations, it is impossible that you will get solution if you are using the iterative methods. Okay, so suppose there are two methods. These things we shall discuss actually in the coming classes. Suppose in CFD, ultimately you generate a matrix, Now that matrix you can solve by direct methods, or you can solve by iterative methods, or you can solve by using both of them. So when you are using solution by direct method, then really you don't need any initial guess. This is correct. Okay. But when you are generating when you are solving by using iterative method, without your initial guess, your calculation will not start. Okay. But in unsteady state problems, initial and boundary conditions are compulsory. Okay. Now there are three basic types of boundary conditions. These are the essential boundary condition type, where we define the unknown values directly. We provide the values of the variable. Okay, this is also known as the Dirichlet type. So degree of freedom is the unknown. So all of you know about this variable, this boundary condition. So value of velocity, pressure, temperature, they will be directly provided. These are the Dirichlet type boundary conditions. If the flux of the variable is provided, specified at some part of the boundary, then we say we are talking about the Neumann boundary condition. So this pronunciation is Neumann, it is not Newman. Okay, so you pronounce it as Neumann. So Neumann or flux boundary conditions. In FEM terminology, we say that Dirichlet is the essential boundary condition, or EBC, and this Neumann is the natural boundary condition, or the NBC. So if we get some kind of boundary conditions where we take linear combinations of Dirichlet and Neumann boundary conditions, then we generate the Robbins or mixed boundary conditions. Okay, so this is the Robbins or the mixed boundary conditions, where we are getting the phi and del phi del n both, and this a and b are constants. So at some part of the boundary, this might be specified. So there is a very important discussion here in this portion. So we are telling that whenever you are solving a problem or this kind of problem, your boundary this entire, suppose you have a unique solution for temperature. So at every point you have temperature has only one solution. Okay, so then we say that we have the solution is existence, and it is unique solution. Okay, existence and uniqueness, suppose it is satisfied, then to get the unique solution at all the points on the boundary conditions can be of only Dirichlet type. It can be a combination of Dirichlet type or Neumann type. It can be a combination of Dirichlet type or Robbins type. It can be a combination of Dirichlet type, Neumann type, or Robin type. But it is impossible that it is a combination of, it is only of Neumann type, or it is only of Robbins type. It is not possible. It means that if we are expecting a unique solution, the boundary conditions where we have the gradients or derivatives, entire boundary cannot have that kind of boundary condition. In that case, you don't get an exact solution. So unique solution. So here, this is not mathematically, we are not discussing mathematics. Actually, in our mechanical means, actually many things, when there is rigorous mathematics, we just use the final statement. We just don't go for the proof. Okay, so here also we are not going for any proof, but for your just as an information, I am adding that this can be totally Dirichlet. This can be Dirichlet plus Neumann. This can be Dirichlet plus Robbins. This can be Dirichlet plus Neumann plus Robbins. But if it is totally Neumann, if it is totally Robbins, or if it is a combination of Neumann and Robbins, you don't get the unique solution for temperature. So this is a guideline for setting the boundary conditions. When you are setting a boundary conditions, you cannot use all the Neumann conditions or the Robbins type conditions. Okay, so now here I shall show boundary conditions that are practically used for some problems. Okay, so we shall discuss only for the viscous flow. We shall not discuss for the inviscid flow. In viscous flow and inviscid flow boundary conditions, things are different. Okay, so I am mainly showing for the, so this is the last class actually on this properties of this means this mathematical behavior, initial condition, boundary condition, and then next class onwards we shall move to this some just before finite difference discussion, some minimum background is required that we shall discuss in tomorrow's class. So after that, just before to that, prior to that, here we show the last part where we are illustrating the practical boundary conditions that we are using. So this is the case of flow past a square geometry. So this is a square section geometry. This you are solving using CFD. Okay, so when you are using CFD, so what is happening in our real exact solution. Suppose you are using for solving the flow past this cylinder, what is the meaning of a solution? Okay, so first I have told you in the beginning itself, when we talk about the solution of an equation, we are telling that we are numerically integrating and we are finding the value of that unknown at every point in the domain. It means that when we are solving, suppose if you look into this equation, so somebody is telling, I have the solution of this equation. What does he mean? He means that I have calculated the value of temperature at different discrete points in the domain, or I have the exact solution. So it means that by solution, we mean that this is the degree of freedom, or this is the unknown. We know the unknown wherever you want. That is the meaning of solution. Okay. So in CFD, actually, we are trying to find out, or we are finding out the solution at discrete points, because exact solutions are not possible. So what is happening here in this particular example? So we have, I am showing this in 2 dimensions. So this is a square geometry into XY plane. These are the coordinate systems. We are fixing it here. And then this entire portion is occupied by fluid medium. Okay, so this is far away. Okay, now CFD is a finite problem. So in the real problem, when there is flow past a square cylinder is happening, let us assume hypothetically that we have the exact solution by solving the momentum equations for Navier-Stokes equations. Then for this particular case, we can easily have all the UVP values at any points. Now you remember, whenever we are talking about exact solution, we mean that exact solution is independent of the size of the domain. It means that when it is exact solution for the flow past this is an external flow. This is the object. So this is flow past this object. So this is an example of an external flow. So remember that when we are talking about this kind of external flows, exact solutions, we mean that this domain has no limits. So these are the limits of the domain. Okay. So this is occupied by fluid. Suppose it is water. This is also water. This is also water. So if we are having exact solution, this boundary, these boundaries, these are moving far away. They are actually infinitely away. It means that we are in exact solutions, we get an unbounded flow problem. Unbounded means the domain is far away from the body. So the domain is the X and Y values, upper limits, they are far away, they are going to infinity. So that is the exact solution case. In our real problem, we cannot have an infinite domain, but we have to rather go for a finite domain. Finite domain means the region where we want the solutions for velocity, pressure, and temperature. That domain should be finite. Okay. So if it is a rectangular domain, the dimension of the rectangle, it should be finite. It need not be a rectangle. It can be a circular domain also. It can be a semicircular domain also. But mostly people, they go for the rectangular domain. I am also using rectangular domain. But there is no rule that you have to use a rectangular domain. Any domain can be used. Okay. So, and all domains will give you good results. Only thing is that the domain should be sufficiently large. So this distance, it is very important distance, and this distance, this is also very important distance. So these 2 distances, they should not be small. So if these distances are small, your predictions of solutions will be incorrect. Okay. So here, when you are solving this CFD problem for flow past a square cylinder, we have, including the energy equation, then we have 4 unknowns. In 2 dimensions, we have 2 velocities, U and V, we have pressure, and we have the temperature. Okay. So in this case, there are 2 boundaries. So in this particular problem, there are 2 boundaries. So this is totally fluid. Okay. So this is fluid boundary. This is fluid, but this is fluid and this is solid. So this is the solid fluid boundary. Okay. And this is the fluid boundary. So it means that in this case, this gamma, there are 2 parts of gamma. One is gamma 1, one is gamma 2. So you can take any one of them as gamma 1. For example, you can take this is as gamma 1. So this is the internal boundary, and this entire boundary, this is gamma 2, or this is the external boundary. Okay. Now, this is your choice that what will be the value of this height of the rectangle. Okay. Different people, they use. So generally what we do, with respect to this dimension, we take this many times actually. So we take around 30 times, 40 times. So this height, we take 30 times, 40 times of this dimension, generally, I am telling you. So we have different boundary conditions. So you have to specify the boundary conditions at the boundaries. So here, at this boundary, we are specifying that the cylinder, this object is not moving. So this is a stationary object. So because of this stationary nature of this object, the flow will be stopped. Flow will stop at this boundary. Okay. So this kind of boundary is known as the no-slip boundary. So it is only existing for the real fluid flow. If it is zero viscosity fluid, there is no existence of no-slip boundary condition. So it is implying that the fluid is totally stopping here, and this surface, this is acting as a streamline. So it means that whenever there is a solid surface within a fluid flow, this solid surface outer periphery or contour of the surface, this represents a streamline, and this streamline is known as the surface streamline or the reference streamline. Okay, so you know that streamlines are not real quantity, real actually, they are imaginary things. So streamlines, why they are imaginary? Because streamlines are contours of stream function. Now stream function is not a physical quantity. You cannot measure the value of stream function. Okay, so it means that stream function is a mathematical quantity. Since stream function is a mathematical quantity, when you plot contours of stream function, those contours are just for explaining the results. They are not real. So you don't get any confusion that streamlines are real. So stream function is not a physical, vorticity is a physical quantity. You can measure vorticity, but you cannot measure stream function. So these streamlines are not real. Okay. So this is a streamline. This streamline is known as a surface streamline. Now you know that there is no flow across the streamline. So by that logic, there is no flow across the streamline. So if this is a streamline, across the streamline, there is no flow. So by this logic, and there is another condition, no penetration condition. Okay. So by these conditions, you will find that if you consider one by one, you will find that these two are holding for this all the surfaces. So this is known as the no slip condition or no relative velocity condition. Slip means relative velocity. It means that at the interface there is friction, strong friction. So friction is always acting whenever there is solid. So this friction will stop the flow. If the fluid is stopping, this, if the body is stopping, if the body is not moving, fluid at the interface will not move. So if the fluid is not moving, this is the condition of no flow, no movement. So this is known as the no slip condition. Okay. But if this object is moving with certain velocity, suppose this cylinder, it is moving with some x velocity, then this will not be zero. No slip does not mean that they have to be zero. No slip means, what is the meaning of no slip condition? No slip condition is a Dirichlet type or essential boundary condition. The meaning of no slip condition is that there is no relative velocity at the interface between the fluid and solid. That is the meaning. Okay. So it means that if the cylinder is moving upward, V will be non-zero. If the cylinder is moving rightward or leftward, U will be non-zero. Okay. And this temperature at the interface is temperature of the wall. Okay. So there is this no slip condition. This is only for the velocity and temperature. No slip condition does not exist for pressure. Okay. So these things you should remember. Sometimes in the interviews people ask. So there is no slip condition for the pressure. In incompressible fluid dynamics, our pressure is always relative pressure or gauge pressure. It is not absolute pressure. But in compressible fluid dynamics, we use the absolute pressure. Okay. So now you know that we have a no slip condition at the interface here. Okay. So this no slip condition is existing only because of friction. Friction means viscosity. So if it is ideal fluid flow, if this is an ideal fluid flow where you cannot use the Navier-Stokes equations, you have to use the Euler equations. In that case, no slip condition does not exist. So that is known as the slip condition. Slip means relative velocity. So what is happening that you think of the imaginary situation. Suppose there is a table. Now on that table you are spilling some ideal fluid with viscosity 0. So if the ideal fluid is flowing over the table is still dry at the interface. So table is not wet. So I am not telling about this hydrophilic or hydrophobic fluids. I am telling the conventional fluid mechanics, not the special kinds of flows. So in conventional fluid mechanics, in conventional sense, when we talk about the ideal fluid flow, then we say that if an ideal fluid is flowing over a surface, it will not stick to the surface. If it is not sticking to the surface, it cannot make the surface wet. The surface will remain dry after the flow. So this is physically impossible. So this also tells us that ideal fluid flow is impossible. So in ideal fluid flow, viscosity is 0. Since the viscosity is 0, these conditions will not be valid. So at the interface, the velocity of the cylinder and velocity of the fluid, they will be different. So there will be relative velocity. Because of relative velocity, we say that there is a slip. Slip means relative velocity. Even in solid mechanics, in belt and pulley, we use the word slip. So always slip means a relative velocity is there. Okay. So this is the no slip condition for velocity and temperature. Okay. Then and there are these boundaries we can classify as inlet boundary. The fluid is coming in this direction, so we define as inlet boundary. This boundary is sufficiently far away from this object. So when it is sufficiently far away from this object, we say that this object cannot influence these parameters. Okay. So here this flow is happening as an ideal fluid flow or the potential fluid flow. So when it is coming as a potential flow, it is showing all the straight and parallel streamlines or identical streamlines. I did not show any streamline. Okay, I think here it is not there. So all the streamlines, they are straight and parallel. So if the streamlines are straight and parallel, they are not inclined. If the streamlines have no slope, it means they are representing one-dimensional flow. If it is a one-dimensional flow, then we get this kind of situation. So where u equals to capital U, the maximum velocity. This is the maximum velocity with which the fluid is coming. So it can be any value. By free stream velocity, we do not say that it has some absolute value. It can be any value. If the fluid is coming with the velocity of 1 meter per second, 1 meter per second will be your free stream velocity. It can be 1.2 meter per second. It can be 100 meter per second. Whatever be the value, that is your free stream value. And that is the maximum value. That is the implicit value. This value is used to calculate the Reynolds number. This is the viscous fluid flow. For viscous fluid flow, the most dominant parameter is the Reynolds number, external fluid flow. To define the Reynolds number, you need one dimension, you need one velocity scale, and you need a material property, fluid property. So this maximum velocity is used to define the Reynolds number. Characteristic dimension. So it is D, it can be a rectangle. Okay, it can be a rectangle also. It can be of any other geometry. So if it is a rectangle, it will have dimensions across the flow. It will have dimensions along the flow. So to define the Reynolds number, we should 100% always take the dimension which is across the flow. Okay, so we should not take the dimension along the flow. So this is D, so we are taking D. Why? Because the gradients are always powerful in the y direction, not that powerful in the x direction. So this is why, when is it valid? When this is a bluff object. Okay, so what is the meaning of a bluff object? The object in which the cross stream dimension and streamwise dimensions, they are comparable, they are the bluff objects. Okay, so if this D is very small compared to this length, okay, then we say that it is a perfect streamlined body. So if it is a streamlined body, then it will not be this dimension, it will be this dimension. Okay, so these things you all, I think sometimes I taught actually this advanced fluid mechanics. So that time also I discussed, and these things most of you know also, but you should not forget actually. All of this you should remember. So this is one-dimensional flow, irrotational flow. If it is irrotational flow, there is no effect of viscosity. So you cannot say that this is inviscid flow. This is the same fluid. This fluid is coming here. So here the fluid is having viscosity. So it means that the fluid is having viscosity here also. It is the same fluid. So what does it mean? It means that viscosity will act only near the solid. It will not act far away from the solid. So if viscosity is present and if it is not acting, then it is behaving like an irrotational flow. Because of that, we say that this is the free stream flow. This is the irrotational flow. So there is no vorticity. Since there is no vorticity, the streamlines are all straight. Okay. If the streamlines are curved or bent, vorticity must be present and it will be a rotational flow. So these things will happen here. So we shall get mostly rotational flow in the wake of this object. Okay. And temperature is also the free stream temperature. Now this is a real boundary condition. So remaining boundary conditions are the mathematical boundary conditions. So these upper and lower boundaries, they are having symmetry. So whatever you are specifying here, you can specify the same boundary conditions here. So this boundary condition is known as the free slip boundary condition. So this is a mathematical boundary condition, not a physical boundary condition. I mean to say that this is not an actual boundary condition. This is not physical boundary condition, but this is a mathematical boundary condition that we say that shear stress component along this direction, it will be 0. And this is a streamline. So streamlines are imaginary lines. So this is fluid to fluid interface. This is a streamline. This is a streamline, but this is not a streamline and this is not a streamline. If it is a streamline, how will the fluid enter here? There is no flow across a streamline. So this cannot be a streamline. This cannot be a streamline. But this is a streamline. There is no flow across the streamline. So V is 0. Here also the same thing we are writing. So component of shear stress is 0. No heat flux in the y direction. Okay. So this is the free slip or the slip condition. So extensively people are using this boundary condition and it has different versions actually. That this condition you can use here if this dimension is very large. And then here also we are using a mathematical boundary condition. So this is known as the traction free boundary condition or the stress free boundary condition. So you see that del U del N, del V del N, both are 0. Okay. So this is del U del X 0, del V del X 0, both are X. So X gradient of these velocity components, they are 0 and del T del X is also 0. And here at this exit boundary, the fluid is leaving at atmospheric pressure. So along this boundary, we say that the pressure is the 0 gauge pressure or atmospheric pressure. If you look into these boundary conditions, we are not using any pressure boundary condition anywhere. Okay. We are using the pressure boundary condition only at the exit. It means that at all these points, pressure is unknown. So in CFD, what we do? At different points, all points, we are trying to find out U, V, and T along with pressure. So now we have discussed these things in details. You know these things, okay? So this is for the viscous flow. You have to remember, this is for viscous flow. In inviscid flow, things will change. This no slip condition does not exist. Here, things will change. In inviscid flow, what will happen? If you look into this, in inviscid flow, suppose this will be velocity. Now there will be viscosity here, mu. Now mu will be 0. So this will be 0. So this will be first order equation. So this Laplace, this Navier-Stokes equations, when you apply for the inviscid flow, it becomes the Euler equations. Euler's equations are first order. So in a second order partial differential equation, you need two boundary conditions, okay, and the two boundaries. In first order equation, you need only one boundary condition. By that logic, what will happen when you apply this problem for the inviscid flow? These boundary conditions here, things will change a lot, okay? And if things are becoming first order equations, what is happening that first order equations cannot have first order boundary conditions. Okay, I told you that the boundary condition should be at least one order lower than the order of the equation. So here, all the things that I have mentioned, that lateral boundaries act as streamlines. So these things, you read it, everything I have discussed, inlet boundary condition, exit boundary condition, lateral boundaries, and the no slip boundaries. Okay, whatever I have discussed, these things are summarized here. So we end here now. So today I am thinking to give 2 attendance, since it is around 40 minutes I have taken, 30 minutes. Okay, so okay. So somebody has some question. Atul, hello, you have some question?
Yes, sir. No,
Okay.
no, sir. Yes, sir. I want to discuss about the quiz. First question. About this was the Navier-Stokes equation nature. So I
Okay.
think, sir, it has more than one option was correct
No, no, it
because
is
you have discussed about this Navier-Stokes equation has some mixed type behavior.
so mixed time only, that there were different choices now. So you have to find out the correct choice out of 4 choices.
But sir, you have said that it can be elliptical, it can be parabolic,
No,
or
no,
it can be parabolic and yes,
no, no,
sir.
no, no, no. It is mixed behavior. It is elliptic, parabolic, both.
But sir, you have said that it cannot be parabolic, it cannot be elliptical, but it can be elliptical, parabolic, and mixed type behavior.
That is
Means
the
elliptical and parabolic both, or parabolic and elliptical both. This type.
thing now. So you have to look into the choices. The correct choice you have to pick up.
Uh,
I am not finding any confusion actually. I think I have given maybe
But you have not clear the this is the elliptical and parabolic or parabolic and hyperbolic.
no, no.
I
I
think, sir.
just suppose I have to make a question. So I know that it is
Yes, sir.
elliptic, parabolic. Now I have to make a question. So I have to write. I have to give some impossible choices also. That you have to pick out that which are the wrong things, and you have to remove them, and the correct one you have to keep.
Okay, sir. But I think that you have not cleared the this is the elliptical parabolic or elliptical hyperbolic
No,
because
no.
you have said that. Yes, sir.
I have told you now that these basic equations, the reference equation, that is
Yes, sir.
not that is not matching with this form of the Navier-Stokes equations. It means that using the method of characteristics, means the method of discriminant, you cannot classify the behavior of the Navier-Stokes equations. So that is done in some different way, and I have never tried actually to search. And in standard books, if you search, you will not get it. So this,
Okay, sir.
yes. Uh, suppose the heat flux value, suppose for this case, you are putting here, it is homogeneous boundary condition. So if it is insulated, then it is homogeneous boundary condition. It cannot be insulated, there is a heat flux value. It can be 1, 2, 3, anything. So then also that is also okay. It can be homogeneous, it can be non-homogeneous, no problem. So suppose if it is homogeneous, your solutions, your things are little easier. If it is non-homogeneous, you have to do some work. So we have a, I think we have a chapter on finite volume method. So when we discuss the finite volume method, we actually discretize this Laplace equation for this kind of boundary conditions. When we have Dirichlet and Neumann both, and we have the non-homogeneous boundary conditions also. So we shall, that time we shall show it. Uh, what are the periodic boundary conditions? Suppose this periodic boundary conditions actually, when we say that the symmetric boundary, periodic boundary condition, actually it is a very commonly, regularly used term, and it is specifically, I no, no, this is suppose, huh, No. Okay. Actually, there are certain terms we don't look into. Actually, many times we come across this periodic boundary condition, But by when we say about a periodic condition, suppose for example, just let us think about a variable. Suppose this u velocity. Okay. Suppose when we talk about the u velocity, by periodic boundary condition, first what you can think that we are talking about an unsteady boundary condition. Okay, so that whenever we talk periodic boundary condition, there is a period in time. So there is a tau actually. So what we say that yes, I have a boundary condition that is a function of time, a transient boundary condition, such that u at t plus tau equals to, again we are getting the u. It means that at the end of this period, I get back my value. So if I have a, suppose if I have a sine curve, okay, so what you are getting at 90 degree, you are getting a peak at, okay, so it means that I have a period of 180 degree. In a sine curve, my period is 180 degree, such that if you just think of the sine curve, then you say at sine theta equals to 0 degree, your sine 0 is 0. At sine pi, means sine 180 degree, you are getting again 0. So it means that at the interval of 180 degree, you are getting the same value. Okay. So this periodic boundary condition, suddenly this is an unsteady boundary condition. And where this kind of situation is happening, that after some interval of time, you are getting the same value at that point. So in unsteady, suppose whatever the examples I have shown here, there we do not need it. But periodic boundary condition, I have seen people use it. Sometimes I have seen that people use it, but for conventional fluid dynamics problems, this kind of problems, we do not need it. This is this free stream condition, this stress-free condition, and this streamline condition. This is the free slip condition or the symmetric boundary condition. So these are adequate. These are sufficient for giving you the solid solution, good solution. So periodic boundary condition, I think just by Google search, simply you can get it. And just you give a search application of periodic boundary conditions in CFD or examples of periodic boundary conditions in CFD. Suppose I think in transient heat conduction, actually I have not taught this conduction radiation many times. Actually, I have in conduction radiation, when we go for this, I forgot actually that there is one Duhamel's principle. So in that case, we discuss about this transient heat
Sir,
conduction. Yes.
sir, I mean, for periodic boundary condition, isn't it for space periodicity? In the sense, let's say if we have an O grid, so
Yes.
for the closure of the O grid, we'll require periodic boundary condition, right?
Suppose when you are making the, suppose 0 degree and 360 degree, they represent the same point. Okay. Suppose
Exactly,
when you are,
exactly, yes.
so when you are drawing, suppose some radial lines, suppose you are making an O grid, you have radial lines and you have circumferential grid lines. Now, your 0 degree radial line, when you are generating the mesh, and your 360 degree radial line, they are falling identical. So in that sense, you are telling that at 0 degree, whatever the value of temperature you have, exactly same value of temperature you have at 360 degree. So this we use actually that when we solve the heat conduction problems in a radial geometry. Suppose in finite difference method, we are not using only for the Cartesian grid, we are using also in the curvilinear grids.
Yes.
So in that case, that boundary condition, actually I have never looked about this periodic boundary condition. Maybe yes, this we are using many times, what you are telling, maybe this is one case that because we are always, those are suppose those are not the mainstream things, but always knowing, I always encourage that if you know more and if you learn more, if your knowledge is more, it is always good for you.
Yes, sir.
So actually, I have never thought about this periodic boundary condition. But suppose today Atul asked, so it is always good that you nurture more, and suppose this is some kind of thing, and what Ardhendu he is asking, he is just discussing. I think this may be one example of that. That when some That may be one case, that periodicity in space. Suppose when you are going for 360-degree difference, suppose if you have a closed curve, that is one case actually, that when people use the stream function vorticity formulation, for example, suppose that in our course also it is there, that we have to use the stream function vorticity formulation for this. I think I have not discussed for stream function vorticity formulation, but most likely for Laplace equation in the curvilinear coordinates, in cylindrical polar coordinates, we discretize. Yes, correct. So this Laplace equation, we discretize in the curvilinear coordinate system. Then we discuss the complete set of the problem, so that if we are using Dirichlet boundary condition at the circumference, so how will you write with respect to r theta coordinate? Okay. So that time we have this situation where this theta equals to 0. Even if you want to make the mesh, actually when you are trying to make the mesh of an annular geometry, then also you have to give some condition. Suppose when you are, I want to tell that, suppose this, you want to make a mesh of a circular sector of 360-degree, not sector, full circle. Okay. Now, when you are making this using finite element method, for example, then certainly you have to take care of 360-degree and 0-degree. Suppose if you are doing simple mesh you are making and you are plotting in Tecplot. Suppose you have 300 points. For all 300 points, you know the r theta coordinates, and this r theta points you are plotting in Tecplot and you are getting the mesh in simple. Then you really don't need any more details for elements, for nodes at 0-degree, or 0-degree means 360-degree. But when you are going for this finite element method, then you have to take care actually around this common line to get the perfect picture of the mesh. So what Ardhendu is telling, I think that it may be, actually I have never thought that much about this periodic boundary condition, because we rarely use it on some special cases. But sometimes in interview, somebody who knows, somebody can ask. Yes. So knowing always more, because there is no end of knowledge. So it is good actually. Yes. Okay. So when we are, as I have told you that when we are using the finite volume method, this conservative form or non-conservative form, these are mainly based on the fluxes. So conservative form is known as the divergence form, where we are representing the convection and diffusion fluxes. So we are taking del x of convective flux, del y of, suppose again del x of diffusion flux. Okay. So what is happening that when we are writing in del x of something and del y of something, that particular format, this is easy for making the integration of the governing equation. Suppose you will have to integrate the governing equation explicitly in finite volume method and finite element method. Finite difference is also integration, but integration is not explicit there. But you cannot say that finite difference is not integration. So when you are going for the finite volume method, suppose you have to integrate these governing equations by using the Green's theorem. So there are two theorems of Green's first theorem, Green's second theorem. So one is for first order derivative, one is for the second order derivative. So when you are integrating in one dimension, integration is straightforward. But when you are integrating in 2 or 3 dimensions, then you cannot integrate without taking help of the Green's theorem. So for integration, you need to cast this in the del x form, del y form. Because of that, we are telling that we have to use in the conservative form. That is the thing. So conservative form in finite volume, finite difference also sometimes we use, but in FEM it is not required. Okay. And I have read in, I think most likely in, I think in Anderson's book, first chapter, or this Patankar's book somewhere, that if you are, for the same problem, whether you are using a conservative form or you are using a non-conservative form, your solutions may differ. Your solutions may not be same. That is also a matter. Okay. So I am just telling you, when you are using finite volume method, simply use the flux form. It means you have to use the conservative form. When you are using the finite difference method, you may use conservative form, you need not use conservative form. If you don't use conservative form, does not matter. When you are using finite element method, you go for the stress divergence form. So stress divergence form is what? When you are writing rho dv bar dt equals to divergence of sigma plus f. This is known as the stress divergence form. So this stress divergence form is the starting point when you are using the FEM. So these are all the requirements are coming from the integration actually. That when you are, suppose if you are integrating in one dimension, easily in one variable, one dimension means you have only x, you don't have y. So you don't need to do any bypass integration. Directly it is coming. Now when you are going for two dimensions, you are having derivatives in x, derivatives in y. So then you cannot integrate directly. Then you need those Green's formula or Green-Gauss formula, Green-Gauss theorem. Okay. Because of that, we have to cast in the flux form. And in finite volume, the principle, the finite volume construction is based on the balancing of fluxes at the cell faces. That is the foundation of finite volume. Because of that, we have to always do in conservative form. Both sides, left-hand side, right-hand side, means convective term also, diffusion term also. But in finite difference, it is not required. You can do, and most of the times we just do non-conservative form. So when you are not using the divergence form of the convection and diffusion terms, we say that we have the non-conservative form. So the format which you mostly learn during your BTech, that is actually the non-conservative form. When you are not writing these equations, when you are not using the divergence symbol, simply I am telling. Simply you are writing u del u del x plus v del u del y, this kind of format. So this is the non-conservative form. You can use non-conservative form, no problem. Okay, and regarding this periodic boundary, actually what happens sometimes we get so much work. Sometimes many things we also omit. Sometimes we don't look into something. Suppose periodic boundary condition, I am hearing this from last 20 years. But I have never taken any interest or I have never looked specifically. But these are, I always suggest that when you want to do a good research or when you want to be a good faculty, you should read good books and you should increase your knowledge actually. This is always good. So marks are important, but marks are not absolute. Marks do not tell about your knowledge. So you should get good marks and you should enhance your knowledge. And you should continue this interest in the subject. It is not, suppose this maintenance of this is very difficult actually. That suppose you have the momentum and to maintain the momentum for your knowledge and work, this is not easy. This is very difficult. But that you have to maintain. Okay. Okay, then thank you. So today I shall give you 2 attendance to all of you. And regarding the quiz, later I saw that I did not send the answer for this note for this eigenvalue part. Okay. So whoever has attempted that eigenvalue part, based on the, I shall mostly give marks. So there is no problem with that. Somehow I forgot actually to send the note, but at least one of you could have informed me that note is not available. I should have mailed. So, okay, thank you. Okay.